Good morning, everyone. My name is Donald, and I'm delighted to be your English teacher today.
Hello, I'm Kim. Today, we're going to learn English through one of the most beloved fairy tales in the world, the story of Cinderella.
Before we begin the story, let me tell you why Cinderella is such an important tale for English learners. This story has been told for hundreds of years in many different cultures. The version most people know today comes from a French writer named Charles Perrault, who published it in 1697.
That's over 300 years ago, Donald, and people still love this story today. Why do you think that is?
Because, Kim, Cinderella teaches us timeless lessons about kindness, hope, perseverance, and believing in yourself, even when life is difficult. These are universal themes that people in every culture and every time period can understand.
Exactly. And from a language learning perspective, this story uses beautiful descriptive language, clear dialogue, and a simple but engaging plot structure. It's perfect for practicing English.
Now, before we begin the story, let's learn some important vocabulary. The first word is cinders. Cinders are the small pieces of ash and coal that remain after a fire has burned. They're black and dirty.
In the story, the main character is called Cinderella because she has to clean the fireplace and often has cinders on her face and clothes. Her real name is Ella, but her stepsisters mockingly call her Cinderella or Cinderella.
Another important word is stepmother. A stepmother is a woman who marries your father but is not your biological mother. In this story, Cinderella's real mother died when Cinderella was young and her father remarried.
We also need to understand stepsister. A stepsister is the daughter of your stepmother or stepfather from a previous marriage. These are not your blood relatives, but they become part of your family through marriage.
Let me teach you the word jealous. When you are jealous of someone, you feel unhappy because they have something you want. You envy them. In this story, the stepsisters are jealous of Cinderella because she's more beautiful and kind than they are.
Another crucial word is godmother. A godmother is a woman who promises to help guide and protect a child, often in a spiritual or moral sense. In Cinderella's story, her fairy godmother is a magical being who helps her when she needs it most.
Excellent. Now let's learn the word transformation. Transformation means a complete change from one form to another. When something transforms, it becomes completely different. We'll see several transformations in this story.
And finally, let's understand midnight. Midnight is 12 o'clock at night, the exact moment when one day ends and a new day begins. In Cinderella's story, midnight is very important. You'll understand why soon.
Perfect. Now, everyone, are you ready to hear the story of Cinderella? Kim and I will tell you this beautiful tale, and we'll stop regularly to explain new words, discuss grammar, and make sure you understand everything clearly.
Let's begin. Once upon a time, and remember, once upon a time is the traditional English phrase we use to start fairy tales, there lived a beautiful young girl named Ella.
Ella lived in a grand house with her father, who was a wealthy gentleman. Her mother had died when Ella was very young, so it was just Ella and her father for many years. They loved each other very much and were quite happy together.
But when Ella was about 15 years old, her father decided to remarry. He wanted Ella to have a mother figure in her life. So he married a widow, a woman whose husband had died, who had 2 daughters of her own.
Let me explain widow clearly. A widow is a woman whose husband has died. The opposite is widower, which is a man whose wife has died. Ella's father was a widower before he remarried.
At first, everything seemed fine. The stepmother was polite to Ella. The 2 stepsisters smiled at her. But Ella's father didn't know that his new wife and her daughters were cruel and selfish people who were only pretending to be kind.
Then tragedy struck. Ella's father became ill and died. This is a very sad moment in the story. With her father gone, Ella had no one to protect her from her stepmother and stepsisters.
The moment Ella's father died, everything changed. The stepmother revealed her true nature. She was cold, greedy, and mean. She fired all the servants to save money. Then she made Ella do all the work in the house.
Let me explain fired clearly. This means to dismiss someone from their job, to tell them they no longer work for you.
The stepmother fired the servants, which meant they lost their jobs and had to leave.
Poor Ella had to wake up before dawn every day. Dawn is the time when the sun rises, when darkness becomes light. She would wake up in the cold, dark early morning and begin her work.
Her work was exhausting. She had to cook all the meals, she had to wash all the dishes, she had to clean all the floors, she had to do the laundry, washing and ironing all the clothes, she had to tend the garden. She worked from sunrise to sunset every single day.
And where did the stepmother make Ella sleep? Not in her beautiful bedroom that she had when her father was alive. No, the stepmother gave that room to one of the stepsisters.
An attic is the space right under the roof of a house. It's usually very small, often cold in winter and hot in summer. It's not a comfortable place to live, but Ella had no choice.
The stepsisters were terribly cruel to Ella. They would deliberately make messes for her to clean up. They would ring a bell and demand she bring them tea or adjust their pillows. They treated her like a servant, not like family.
One day, as Ella was cleaning the fireplace, the place where you burn wood to heat a house, she got cinders and ash all over her face and dress. The stepsister saw her and started laughing mockingly.
Mockingly means in a mean, teasing way, making fun of someone. The stepsister said, "Look at you, you're covered in cinders. We should call you Cinderella." And they laughed and laughed.
From that day on, they refused to call her Ella. They only called her Cinderella, trying to humiliate her and remind her that she was just a servant who cleaned fireplaces. But Cinderella, never complained. She bore her difficulties with grace and dignity.
To bear something means to endure it, to carry it, to accept it even though it's difficult. Cinderella bore her hardships patiently. And grace means elegance and kindness in how you behave, especially in difficult situations.
Despite all her hardships, Cinderella remained kind. She was kind to the animals, the mice in the house, the birds in the garden. She would share her small portions of food with them. She would sing to them while she worked. The animals loved her because she had such a gentle heart.
Years passed this way. Cinderella grew from a girl into a beautiful young woman. But she had no friends, no pretty dresses, no happiness. Only work, 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 day after day.
Then one day, something exciting happened. A messenger from the royal palace arrived at the house. He knocked on the door, knock, 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 and Cinderella answered.
The messenger said, "I have an announcement from His Royal Highness the King. The king is hosting a grand ball at the palace tomorrow evening. All the young ladies in the kingdom are invited. The prince is looking for a bride, and he wishes to meet every eligible young woman."
Let me explain some vocabulary here. A ball is a formal party where people dance. His Royal Highness is how we address a king or prince. Eligible means qualified or suitable, in this case, suitable for marriage.
The stepmother was thrilled. She immediately began planning. "Anastasia, Drizella," she called, "you must prepare. One of you might marry the prince and become a princess. We must choose your best gowns."
A gown is a fancy, formal dress that women wear to special occasions. The stepsisters started arguing about which gowns they would wear, which jewels, which shoes.
The stepsisters listened to all this excitement. Quietly, she asked, "Stepmother, may I go to the ball as well? The invitation said all the young ladies in the kingdom are invited."
The stepmother looked at Cinderella with cold eyes. She said, "You go to the ball? Don't be ridiculous. You have nothing to wear, you have no transportation, and besides, you have far too much work to do. Now go and help your sisters prepare their gowns."
Ridiculous means absurd, silly, laughable. The stepmother thought it was ridiculous that Cinderella, who was just a servant in her own home, would dare to think about going to a royal ball.
Cinderella's heart broke a little, but she didn't argue. She helped her stepsisters prepare. She styled their hair, she pressed their gowns with an iron to remove the wrinkles. She fastened their necklaces. She did everything they demanded.
The evening of the ball arrived, the stepmother and stepsisters dressed in their finest clothes. They looked at themselves in the mirror thinking they were beautiful, though honestly, their ugly personalities made them quite ugly on the outside too.
As they were leaving, the stepmother turned to Cinderella and said, "While we're gone, I want you to clean every room in this house, scrub all the floors, polish all the silverware, and have it done by the time we return." Then she left, slamming the door behind her.
Cinderella stood alone in the empty house. She heard the carriage drive away, carrying her stepmother and stepsisters to the wonderful ball. And finally, after being strong for so long, she began to cry.
She went out into the garden and sat on a bench near the fountain. Tears rolled down her cheeks. She said to herself, "It's not fair. I work so hard. I'm always kind. Why do I have to suffer while they go to the ball and have fun? I wish I could go too."
As she was crying, something magical happened. A bright light appeared in the garden. It grew bigger and brighter until it formed into the shape of an elderly woman with a kind, smiling face.
Cinderella gasped in surprise. Who are you?" she asked. The fairy godmother said, "I am your fairy godmother, my dear. I've been watching over you all these years, and I cannot bear to see you so sad anymore."
A fairy is a magical being in stories, usually small and beautiful with wings. A godmother, as we learned earlier, is someone who promises to help and guide you. So a fairy godmother is a magical being who protects and helps you.
Cinderella could hardly believe her eyes. A fairy godmother? But I didn't know I had a fairy godmother. The fairy godmother smiled. "Every good-hearted child has a fairy godmother, dear, and you have the kindest heart I've ever seen. Now, dry your tears. You shall go to the ball."
You shall go. Notice the grammar here. Shall is an old-fashioned way of saying will. It sounds formal and a bit magical. The fairy godmother is making a promise.
Cinderella said, "But I have nothing to wear. I have no way to get there." My stepmother said. The fairy godmother interrupted gently. "Never mind what your stepmother said. I am going to help you. But first, I need you to bring me a few things."
What things? Cinderella asked. The fairy godmother said, "Bring me a pumpkin from the garden, 6 mice from the mouse traps, a rat from the rat trap, and 6 lizards from the garden wall."
Cinderella was confused, but she trusted her fairy godmother. She brought all these things. The pumpkin was large and round and orange. The mice were small and gray. The rat was bigger than the mice. The lizards were green and quick-moving.
The fairy godmother smiled and said, "Now watch closely, my dear. This is magic." She raised her wand. A wand is a thin stick that magicians and fairies use to perform magic, and she waved it over the pumpkin.
Sparkles of light surrounded the pumpkin. Before Cinderella's amazed eyes, the pumpkin began to transform. It grew larger and larger. It changed color from orange to gold. Windows appeared in its sides. Wheels formed at the bottom. Within seconds, the pumpkin had become a magnificent golden carriage.
A carriage is a vehicle pulled by horses that people used for transportation before cars were invented. This carriage was beautiful, golden and gleaming, with soft cushions inside and decorated with jewels that sparkled in the moonlight.
"Oh my!" Cinderella exclaimed in wonder. But the fairy godmother wasn't finished. She waved her wand once more, and this time the magic surrounded Cinderella herself.
Cinderella felt warmth spreading through her body. She looked down and watched in amazement as her ragged dress transformed. It became a beautiful ball gown, the most magnificent dress she had ever seen.
The gown was made of silk and satin. These are smooth, luxurious fabrics. It was a pale blue color, like the sky just before sunset. It sparkled with thousands of tiny crystals that caught the light like stars.
The sleeves were delicate and graceful. The skirt was full and flowing, perfect for dancing. Around her shoulders appeared a white fur wrap to keep her warm, and on her feet appeared the most unusual shoes. They were made entirely of glass.
Glass slippers! Can you imagine? Shoes made of glass, clear as crystal, sparkling like diamonds. They fit Cinderella's feet perfectly, as if they had been made especially for her.
Cinderella looked at herself in wonder. She had never looked so beautiful. She had never felt so beautiful. She twirled around and the dress floated gracefully around her.
The fairy godmother smiled with satisfaction. There, now you look like the princess you were meant to be. But Cinderella, my dear, you must listen carefully. This magic will only last until midnight.
Midnight? Cinderella asked. Yes, said the fairy godmother seriously. At the stroke of midnight, at the exact moment the clock strikes 12, the magic will end. Your gown will become rags again. The carriage will become a pumpkin. The horses will become mice. Everything will return to how it was before.
So you must leave the ball before midnight, the fairy godmother continued. Do you understand? You must be home before the clock strikes 12, or everyone will see you in your rags and you'll be stranded at the palace with no way home.
Cinderella nodded seriously. I understand, fairy godmother. I promise I will leave before midnight. And thank you so much for this wonderful gift. She hugged her fairy godmother tightly.
The fairy godmother hugged her back and said, You deserve this happiness, my dear child. You've been patient and kind even when life was cruel. Now go, enjoy the ball, and remember, before midnight. Then, with a wave of her wand, she disappeared in a shower of sparkles.
Cinderella climbed into the golden carriage. The coachman snapped the reins, the leather straps used to control horses, and the 6 white horses began to run. The carriage rolled smoothly through the streets toward the royal palace.
When Cinderella arrived at the palace, everyone stopped and stared. They had never seen such a beautiful carriage or such a beautiful young lady. The footmen rushed to help her out of the carriage. Guards opened the palace doors for her.
She climbed the grand staircase, a very large, impressive set of stairs, and entered the ballroom. The ballroom was enormous, with high ceilings, crystal chandeliers, marble floors, and golden decorations everywhere.
A chandelier is a large decorative light fixture that hangs from the ceiling and holds many candles or lights. The chandeliers in this ballroom sparkled with hundreds of candles, making the whole room glow with warm golden light.
Hundreds of people were already at the ball. Noblemen and noblewomen in fancy clothes, all talking, laughing, and dancing to the beautiful music played by the royal orchestra.
But the moment Cinderella entered, everyone fell silent. They all turned to look at her. Who was this mysterious, beautiful woman? No one recognized her because she looked so different from the Cinderella who cleaned fireplaces.
Even her own stepmother and stepsisters didn't recognize her. They stared at her and whispered to each other, "Who is that elegant lady? She must be a foreign princess. Look at her beautiful dress. Look at those extraordinary glass slippers."
At the far end of the ballroom, on a raised platform, sat the king and his son, the prince. The prince had been bored all evening. He had danced with many young ladies, but none of them interested him. He found them all shallow and concerned only with his title and wealth.
Shallow means not deep. In this context, it means not having depth of character, not having interesting thoughts or genuine feelings. The prince thought these ladies were shallow because they only cared about becoming a princess, not about him as a person.
But when the prince saw Cinderella enter the ballroom, something changed. He sat up straight. His eyes widened. He had never seen anyone so beautiful, and not just physically beautiful, but there was something about her presence, something genuine and kind that showed in her eyes.
The prince stood up immediately and walked across the ballroom towards Cinderella. Everyone watched as he approached her. The prince bowed formally and said, "Good evening, my lady. I am Prince Charming. Would you do me the great honor of dancing with me?"
Cinderella curtsied. Remember, that's the formal bow that women do, and said, "The honor would be mine, Your Highness." She took his offered hand and he led her onto the dance floor.
The orchestra began to play a waltz. A waltz is a type of formal dance where partners hold each other and move together in a 3-beat rhythm. It's romantic and elegant. The prince and Cinderella began to dance and they moved together perfectly, as if they had been dancing together all their lives.
Everyone in the ballroom stopped what they were doing to watch. The prince and Cinderella danced beautifully, spinning and gliding across the floor. They gazed into each other's eyes and smiled, completely absorbed in each other, forgetting that hundreds of people were watching.
To be absorbed in something means to be completely focused on it, so focused that you don't notice anything else around you. The prince and Cinderella were so absorbed in each other that the rest of the world seemed to disappear.
They danced one dance, then another, then another. The prince would not dance with anyone else. He stayed with Cinderella all evening. They talked as they danced, and the prince found her to be not just beautiful, but also intelligent, kind, and interesting.
Cinderella was having the most wonderful time of her life. She had never been so happy. She forgot about her cruel stepmother. She forgot about her mean stepsisters. She forgot about all the years of hardship and loneliness. In this moment, she was simply a young woman dancing with a handsome prince.
They were so absorbed in each other that Cinderella forgot something very important. Can you guess what she forgot?
She forgot to watch the time. She forgot her fairy godmother's warning. She forgot that the magic would end at midnight.
Suddenly, as they were dancing, Cinderella heard the palace clock begin to chime. Bong! The first stroke of midnight. Her heart stopped. She had lost track of time completely.
Bong! The second stroke. Cinderella's eyes widened in panic. "I must go," she said suddenly to the prince. "What?" said the prince, confused. "Why? What's wrong?" Bong! The third stroke.
"I'm sorry, I must leave immediately," Cinderella said. She pulled away from the prince and began running toward the door. Bong! The fourth stroke.
"Wait," called the prince. "I don't even know your name." But Cinderella kept running.
Bong! The fifth stroke. Cinderella ran through the ballroom. Everyone stared in surprise. Why was this beautiful lady running away? Bong! The sixth stroke.
She ran down the grand staircase, moving so fast that she almost tripped. Bong! The seventh stroke. As she ran, one of her glass slippers fell off her foot, but she couldn't stop to pick it up. There was no time. Bong! The eighth stroke. She kept running with only one shoe.
Bong! The ninth stroke. The prince ran after her, but she was too fast. He reached the staircase and saw the glass slipper lying there, sparkling in the moonlight. He picked it up carefully.
Bong! The 10th stroke.
Cinderella reached her carriage and jumped inside. Go quickly," she told the coachman. The carriage raced away from the palace. Bong! The 11th stroke. They were almost home.
Bong! The 12th and final stroke of midnight. Suddenly, the magic ended. The golden carriage transformed back into a pumpkin, but Cinderella was home by then, so she wasn't hurt. The horses became mice again. The coachman became a rat. The footmen became lizards.
And Cinderella's beautiful gown became her ragged dress again, but she still had one glass slipper, the one that hadn't fallen off. She held it in her hands, looking at it in wonder, hardly believing that any of it had been real.
Meanwhile, back at the palace, the prince stood on the steps holding the other glass slipper. His father, the king, came out and asked, "What happened? Where did the mysterious princess go?"
The prince said, "I don't know, father. She ran away before I could even learn her name. But I do know this. She is the woman I want to marry. She is kind, genuine, and beautiful inside and out. I must find her."
The king said, "But how will you find her? You don't know her name. You don't know where she lives. You don't even know what she looks like anymore. You only danced with her in the dim light of the ballroom."
The prince held up the glass slipper and said, "I have this, and I know that this slipper will fit only her. Glass slippers are not common. Tomorrow I will visit every house in the kingdom. I will have every young woman try on this shoe. The woman whose foot fits this shoe perfectly, she is the one I will marry."
The king agreed to this plan. So the very next day, the prince began his search. He sent a royal proclamation throughout the kingdom. A proclamation is an official announcement. The proclamation said, "The prince is searching for the woman who wore this glass slipper. All young ladies must try on the shoe."
The prince, along with his royal attendants, traveled from house to house throughout the kingdom. At each house, every young woman tried on the glass slipper, but the shoe didn't fit anyone. It was too small for some, too narrow for others, too wide for others still.
Days passed. The prince visited hundreds of houses and hundreds of young women tried on the slipper, but none of them were the right woman. The prince was beginning to lose hope. Would he ever find his mysterious princess?
Finally, the prince and his attendants arrived at the house where Cinderella lived with her stepmother and stepsisters. The stepmother heard the commotion outside and looked out the window. "The prince is here," she cried.
Immediately, the stepmother thought of her own daughters. "Anastasia, Drizella, the prince is here with the glass slipper. One of you must make that slipper fit, no matter what. If you marry the prince, our family will be rich and powerful forever."
The stepsisters tried desperately to squeeze their feet into the slipper. Anastasia tried first. She pushed and pushed, but her foot was too wide. The slipper wouldn't fit. Then Drizella tried. She pushed so hard that she was in pain, but her foot was too long. The slipper still wouldn't fit.
The prince sighed with disappointment. "Is there anyone else in this household?" he asked. The stepmother quickly said, No one else, just my two beautiful daughters." She wanted to hide Cinderella because she didn't want her stepdaughter to have any chance at happiness.
But at that moment, Cinderella appeared at the top of the stairs. She had heard all the commotion. She said politely, "Excuse me, Your Highness, I live here too. May I try the slipper?"
The stepmother's face turned red with anger. "You? Don't be absurd. Get back to the kitchen where you belong." But the prince held up his hand to silence her. He looked up at Cinderella on the stairs, and something in his heart stirred.
"Every young woman in the kingdom must try the slipper," the prince said firmly. "That was my proclamation. Please, miss, come and try it." Cinderella came down the stairs. The stepsisters laughed mockingly. "This dirty servant girl, thinking she could be your princess? How ridiculous!"
But the prince ignored them. He gestured for Cinderella to sit down. Gently, carefully, he placed the glass slipper on her foot. And it fit perfectly. It was as if the shoe had been made exactly for her foot, which, in a magical sense, it had been.
The stepmother and stepsisters gasped in shock. Their faces turned pale. Could this really be the beautiful woman from the ball? The prince looked into Cinderella's eyes, and recognition dawned on his face.
"It's you," he whispered. "You're the one I danced with. I knew I would recognize you." Then Cinderella reached into her pocket and pulled out the other glass slipper, the one that she had kept from the magical night.
Everyone in the room gasped again. Cinderella had the matching slipper. There was no doubt now. She was the mysterious princess from the ball. The prince took both her hands in his and said, "Will you marry me?"
Cinderella's eyes filled with happy tears. "Yes," she said softly. "Yes, I will marry you." And at that moment, the fairy godmother appeared again in a shower of sparkles. She waved her wand, and Cinderella's ragged dress transformed once more into a beautiful gown.
The prince and Cinderella were married in a magnificent royal wedding. The entire kingdom celebrated. Cinderella forgave her stepmother and stepsisters. That's how kind her heart was, though they were very ashamed of how they had treated her.
And Cinderella and the prince lived happily ever after in the palace, ruling the kingdom with kindness and wisdom, never forgetting what it was like to suffer hardship, and always treating everyone, rich or poor, noble or common, with equal respect and compassion.
And that, everyone, is the story of Cinderella. Now, let's discuss what we've learned today, both in terms of language and life lessons.
From a vocabulary perspective, we learned so many useful words today. Stepmother, stepsister, cinders, jealous, godmother, transformation, midnight, widow, attic, carriage, chandelier, proclamation, and many more.
We also learned beautiful expressions and phrases. Once upon a time, lived happily ever after, at the stroke of midnight, to bear something with grace, and shallow person. These phrases are commonly used in English storytelling.
From a grammar perspective, notice how fairy tales use past tense for narration. Cinderella lived, the prince danced, the stepmother was cruel, but they use present tense and future tense in dialogue. I must go, "You will marry me. The magic will end."
We also saw many examples of descriptive language. Instead of just saying the dress was pretty, we said the gown was made of silk and satin, pale blue in color, sparkling with thousands of tiny crystals. This descriptive language helps you practice using adjectives and creating vivid images with words.
Now, let's discuss the deeper lessons of this story. What do you think is the main moral lesson of Cinderella?
I believe the main lesson is that kindness and goodness will ultimately be rewarded. Cinderella remained kind even when people were cruel to her. She stayed hopeful even when life was difficult, and in the end, her goodness was recognized and rewarded.
That's absolutely right, Kim. Another important lesson is that true beauty comes from within. The stepsisters were concerned only with their external appearance, their dresses, their jewelry, their hair, but the prince fell in love with Cinderella because of her inner beauty, her kindness, her grace, her genuine nature.
The story also teaches us about patience and faith. Cinderella didn't know when or if her situation would improve, but she kept faith. She continued to be a good person. She didn't become bitter or cruel like her stepsisters, even though she had every reason to be angry.
And there's a lesson about recognition and true value. The prince could have married any woman in the kingdom based on beauty or status, but he chose Cinderella because he recognized her true worth. He saw beyond the surface to who she really was.
I find it interesting that in this story, magic helps Cinderella, but magic alone isn't enough. The fairy godmother gives her the opportunity, the dress, the carriage, the shoes, but Cinderella herself must have the courage to go to the ball. She must be herself at the ball. The magic just opens the door. Cinderella must walk through it.
That's a profound observation, Kim. In life, we might get opportunities, that's our magic, but we must have the courage and the character to take advantage of those opportunities. The opportunity means nothing if we don't act on it.
Another interesting aspect is the glass slipper. Why do you think the shoe is made of glass, Donald? What does that symbolize?
Great question. I think glass symbolizes several things. First, glass is transparent. You can see through it. This represents Cinderella's honesty and transparency. She has nothing to hide. Second, glass is delicate and precious, like Cinderella herself. And third, glass is unique. The slipper fits only Cinderella, just as she is unique and irreplaceable.
I love that interpretation. And notice that the glass slipper is the only part of the magic that doesn't disappear at midnight. The dress becomes rags, the carriage becomes a pumpkin, but the slippers remain glass. This suggests that some things are meant to last, that true love and true connections survive beyond temporary magic.
From a teaching perspective, I want to point out how this story uses cause and effect. Cinderella is kind, therefore the fairy godmother helps her. The prince finds the slipper, therefore he searches for Cinderella. The slipper fits, therefore they get married. Understanding cause and effect helps you understand story structure in English.
We also see the classic story structure, beginning, middle, and end. The beginning establishes the problem, Cinderella's difficult life. The middle shows the complication, the ball, the magic, the midnight deadline. The end provides resolution, finding Cinderella, marriage, happiness.
Now let me give you some homework to practice what you've learned today. First, try retelling this story in your own words. You don't need to remember every detail, just tell the main events in order. This helps you practice narrative skills.
Second, choose 10 new vocabulary words from today's lesson and write sentences using each word. For example, the transformation was magical. She worked from dawn until midnight. The jealous sisters were unkind.
Third, write a short paragraph, about 5 or 6 sentences, describing your favorite part of the story and why you liked it. This helps you practice expressing opinions in English.